Alright, this is Chat UTD. It's the first video I've done in I think more than 2 weeks. I was away on holiday, so I missed the Brighton game. I was flying when the Brighton game was on. I didn't really feel like I could comment on that. And then this last week's just been mad busy, so lots to catch up on. I won't go into too much detail on Brighton and Forest because obviously it's been and gone, but 3 wins in a row and then draw. So the team's in decent form, which is hopefully building a foundation from which we can have a season that we perhaps didn't expect was possible, but it depends obviously on the next results. So I will preview Tottenham and catch up on other things as well. Just as part of the preview of the Tottenham game, actually, something I was meaning to do a video on a couple of weeks ago. After the Liverpool game, Jamie Carragher was on the GNev podcast and said the system that United play is fine against Liverpool away. It kind of lends itself to that, and maybe some of the bigger teams, it lends itself to playing against the bigger teams. But longer term, when you're playing Brighton at home or Forest away, you know, is it a system that can work against those teams? It's an interesting point. I would change the criteria of what he said, though. I don't think necessarily the system is the problem. I think what I would say is playing percentage football, counter-attacking football. Is that okay against your Brightons and against your Notts Forests and maybe even Tottenham, because the fans might expect more? The answer to that is that you have to deal with the cards you've been dealt, and right now Ruben Amorim needs results, and I don't think we can be too precious about the way he gets them. If we get them through playing percentage counter-attacking football, then we get them through percentage counter-attacking football. And it was what Solskjaer excelled at over the time that he was at United. The problem for Solskjaer was that it never moved on from that. And I bemoaned it at the time, said many times we were a moments team. We were a team that basically sat deep, didn't know how to break a low block, which I'll come back to, but sat deep and would hit teams on the counter attack, and or have individuals like Fernandes, Rashford when he was in form, Greenwood, Martial, Pogba, which was like 1 in every 10 games, but nonetheless a talented player, Cavani, etc. would produce a moment of magic and United would win. But after 3 years, it just carried on like that because that was the limitations that Solskjaer had. But don't forget, under Solskjaer, we qualified for the Champions League 2 years in a row. I think the worst we finished was 6th. So now, with where we are now, we've just finished 15th. So long term, do I want us to just be a moments team that play counter-attacking football? No. I think we have to graduate to something more sophisticated than that and have more versatility to our play than that. But just like I've said before, United need to go through 3 stages to get right to the top. Maybe Amorim needs to go through 3 stages if he's to stay long enough to do it, in that perhaps the first stage, which after a year you'd hope he was well into, but I think we seem to be just starting it now. The first stage is you get a run of results. By hook or by crook, you get the team buying into your culture rather than maybe your style of play, and you get some wins under your belt. Because that buys time for you to go into the next stage. If United don't keep getting results, Amorim will be sacked. So if counter-attacking percentage football gets us results, that gets him time. When he's got time, maybe he then graduates to more of a presentation of what he actually wants, and then the third stage would be that it's honed and perfected. He probably won't get all 3 of those stages, but you've got to be pragmatic, you've got to win games, and this team still now suits playing in transition and playing on the counter-attack and relying on moments like Ahmad's equaliser against Forest, like a set piece against Forest. The structure of the way we play I don't think is particularly attractive or set. I think it's very much reactive, but at the moment, if that's what it needs to be, then that's what it needs to be. maybe that's the way Amorim plays. I don't know enough about how he played at Sporting Lisbon. I saw the game against City in the Champions League. That was a counter-attacking, direct performance, especially in the second half. I think it was either 1-0 or 1-1 at half time. It was either 1-0 to City or 1-1 at half time. And they won 4-1. And the second half was just an absolute counter-attacking masterclass. And it was just direct, quick, counter-attacking percentage football. And they beat City 4-1. But that's City in the Champions League. I don't know if they played like that every week. I go back to the 93-94 team, and that's my favourite Man United team. And I remember a game against Sheffield United away, and we were playing in the black Sharp View Cam kit. I think it must have been 1 or 2-0 to United, and Sheffield United were throwing men forward. It was either a set piece or a long throw in, and Cantona got the ball on the edge of United's defensive box, sprayed it out wide, and 2 passes later he was on the end of finishing off for a goal. That was vintage, that team. That team played direct, quick, counter-attacking, concise, succinct football. Nothing pretty at times about it. There was times where we could mix it up and play pretty football, but at our best it was dynamic and quick and cutthroat. And there was often times when Schmeichel would get the ball, bowl it out to either Kanchelskis or Giggs or Lee Sharp if he was playing, and 2 passes later we'd score if teams had overcommitted men forward. So that for me, as I say, is the best Man United team I've watched. And one of their biggest strengths was counter-attacking football. So I don't think we can be too snobby to say, well, we're playing Brighton at home here, or we're playing Notts Forest away or Tottenham away. We should be doing this or we should be doing that. Yeah, maybe back in the day, perhaps we could mix it up and we can do various different things, which that 93-94 team could. If you wanted to fight with them, they'll have a fight. If you sat deep, they'll just pass around you. But one of their biggest strengths was counter-attacking football. And I think if they're, with the team they had, can do that, I don't think we can be too snobby about it. And Forest played with I think they played with a low block the other day, last week. But of late, teams are coming in and having a go at United. Teams aren't scared of United anymore because of how bad we've been. 15th last season. So teams are coming, particularly at Old Trafford, and playing quite open. So if they're going to do that, punish them. Don't be obsessed with controlling the game. Punish them on the counter-attack. Where we're going to come unstuck is teams that play low block. And Forest, I think, did that. But then you rely on your moments, don't you? Then you rely on your Mbumos and your Cunhas and your Fernandes and Casemiro from a set piece and Ahmad scoring a screamer. And obviously we could have ended up winning that game. So it's still possible to beat teams like that with the quality of players we've got. And I think in particular with Mbeumo and Cunha, I think they give us that little bit of stardust, which we were lacking previously. I noticed that last week, particularly Mbeumo last week. He gets in those little pockets of space in the inside right channel, particularly when Ahmad's playing wide right and the defender's drawn over to him, and Mbeumo will just carry the ball 20 yards in the blink of an eye. He does things quickly. For too long we've done things too slow. I think he gives a dynamism to our attack, certainly so far. And Cunha's yet to really spark yet, but he's a lad that's got levels and levels to get to, I think, and he's capable of doing that. So we have individual players who can hurt teams, I think. So thinking about the Spurs game, they probably will come at us, I imagine, and that might play into our hands. I think it's massively important that we don't lose that game, at least, because you want to keep that momentum going. Otherwise, the 3 wins in a row just feels like a flash in a pan, especially if we get beat. I think a draw is not the end of the world, but a win would be a win. And what we're talking then, 5 wins out of 7, is it? Something like that, if we win. Now you're talking, that's decent form. And with where we are in the league, you're not a million miles away from being in the top 3 if you win that game. So I think it's a massive game, and I think it's a more than winnable game. Come on, lads, it's Tottenham, as we used to say. Just a couple of insights, my insights on individual players. Diogo Dalot's an honest pro who I think always tries his best, and he's certainly not short of work ethic and endeavour. But he's one of the weaker parts of the team, one of the weaker players in the team. Maybe teams that finish last season 15th, and I believe, I don't think we'll finish any higher than 8th this season. Maybe a team that finishes between 15th and 8th is going to have players like Diogo Dalot. You know, maybe that's just the way it is these days, unfortunately, for United. But I just feel like there's other options. I feel like Dorgu's by no means the finished article, but I'd have Dorgu on the left and Ahmad on the right. I think the balance is far better. I don't see what Dalot gives us that other players that we have as options don't. And it is starting to become, I wonder if it's becoming a blind spot with Amorim, and every manager has one, but it's costing us. And I think that's just something to keep an eye on. I'm not berating the lad. I'm not sensationalising anything and having a go at him and slagging him off. I think he's an honest boy who I think really gets United. I think wants to be there. I think is a good honest lad, but he's not good enough, and I think he's costing the team. Seshko, I actually recorded a post-match reaction thing to the Forest game, and then in the end it just ran out of time to upload it, and I mentioned in that, so I'll just say it here, I thought he was quite poor against Forest. I think for a big lad, the ball doesn't stick enough. He doesn't throw his weight around enough. I don't think he presses quickly enough or aggressively enough. When he gets the ball, I think he's quite indecisive. He makes some decent runs, but when he actually gets the ball in good positions, it never looks like he particularly looks confident with what he's doing. It's early days. Again, I'm not being sensational. I'm not writing the lad off. But I think we look a much more balanced team when we've got Mount, Cunha and Mbeumo as the front three. People have spoken about him winning flick-ons and it gives us a different dynamic. He wins one in every 5 or 6. And when he wins it, it stands out because we've never had that option before. But for a big boy, which he is, I don't think he throws his weight around anywhere near enough. And Gary Neville made a past comment on him and sort of said he's the other two are doing really well in terms of Cunha and Mbeumo, and Seshko really has got to improve. Whether he's young or not, he's got to improve, and I agree with him. And I think it's okay to say that. It's not hanging the lad out to dry. It's not having a go at him. It's I'm not impressed with what I've seen so far. And there's some people that would say, well, this has been a problem for a long time. The strikers don't get service at United, but you can't praise Mbeumo and Cunha, who are supplying the service now, on the one hand, and then say we're still not getting any service to the strikers. And you know what? Even if you're not getting loads of service to the strikers, maybe I'm harking back, and it's ill-advised to do that. I remember watching Mark Hughes feed off scraps for years and years and years, up front, toiling on his own until Cantona got there with him. I know Brian McClare was there as well, but Hughes, whilst feeding off scraps, was a monstrous presence in that team. And you can feed off scraps and everyone knows you're feeding off scraps, but you're doing your job brilliantly. That wasn't the case with Højlund, and it's not the case with Seshko so far. But he's young and he's got time on his side to improve. But we need to start seeing something from him. I don't think he's given a particularly good account of himself so far at United. Just sticking with Gary Neville, because it is related to our club. He was inducted into the Premier League Hall of Fame this week. Watched a sort of like a compilation that went with the accolade. Not everyone's cup of tea, Gary Neville, now that he's a pundit. I loved him as a player. I thought he was a representation of us, as in me and my mates, who all grew up supporting United. He was living our dream because he grew up supporting United. His family supported United. He's from near the area, and he's playing for Manchester United, and he played like that. There's your difference between him and Rashford. Rashford had the opportunity to do it, and for me took a massive great shit on it. Gary Neville took that opportunity and absolutely got every tiny last bit out of himself, talent-wise, because of his application, and made a fantastic career for himself. And when I watch that compilation of him, I feel proud of him for being the player he was, because for me he's one of us. And whether you like what he says now or not is for me partly irrelevant. I thought the comment he made regarding something political a few weeks ago, which I'm not going to get into, I thought was disgusting. Blaming people that had put St George's flags up for an incident that had happened. He needs to keep his mouth shut about stuff like that. But in terms of a football sense, phenomenal player for United, and I'm just proud that one of ours has been given that accolade, and I feel very blessed to have watched the teams that he was a part of and know how much Man United meant and probably still means to him. So good on him. What else have we missed? Yeah, the Ronaldo interview. So Ronaldo was interviewed by Piers Morgan, probably one of my least favourite people in the world. But Ronaldo, again, I think took aim at the Glazers and sort of said the club's not on the right path and that the structure of the club isn't right and that Ruben Amorim needs a miracle. And I think he's bob on. Yeah, well, you know that, don't you? If you watch my channel, you know that I think he's bob on. But it relates to another thing that happened actually. Jason Wilcox was interviewed. He was on, was it called Inside Carrington, the podcast. It was actually all right. Actually, it was for a United-based podcast. It was, as in like from the club itself rather than from a fan channel or anything like that. It was pretty decent. But so Phil Jones, Helen Evans, who's Johnny Evans' missus, who hosts things on MUTV, and then the commentator from MUTV were there, and then Jason Wilcox was there for a bit of it. And he speaks very well. He comes across well. I think Scholesy said it recently. There's no Man United people in those key positions. Darren Fletcher's there, but Darren Fletcher, I love Darren Fletcher as a player. Again, a fantastic player for United, underrated in my opinion, and a real proper red. You can see that. But I don't know what particular role he has. I don't think it's particularly significant anymore. You need people that are qualified to do roles. But if you look at Bayern Munich, would be the example I would think, like Rummenigge, Beckenbauer, all these legends of the club were then in strategic infrastructure roles within the football board. I don't know who it would be, but I feel like we need someone who understands Manchester United, and maybe I'm old-fashioned in that respect, and I'm not. Jason Wilcox is obviously another person doing his best and is a mouthpiece for Ineos, and Ineos obviously are in bed with the Glazers, so I'm probably a little bit biased because of that. But Jason Wilcox, with respect, played for Blackburn and played for Leeds, and then went and worked for Manchester City and did a good job for them. But he wasn't a director of football at Manchester City. Omar Barada wasn't a chief executive at Manchester City. This is a debut in those roles for those two people, and they're Man City people. And City have been really successful, and success leaves crumbs. But the difference is City had an infinite bottomless pit of money. We haven't. And we're Man United. So when I hear him, I think, yeah, he's decent. But as I say, I haven't got the exact answer as to who it would be, but I feel like if we're going to go with this structure, which unfortunately it looks like we're going to have to for now, there's no alternative. The stuff about any takeover has gone absolutely stone dead. Then I would want United people in the room who actually know what they're talking about. He was saying that, you know, it's stunning to see how big it is once you get in there and it really gets under your skin and all this kind of stuff. He's obviously going to say the right things, but I'm like, yeah, well, I don't know. I think this. I'm going to say this because I'm biased. There are certain clubs who are set apart from anyone else. Manchester United, Bayern Munich, Real Madrid, Barcelona, AC Milan are the five that I would have in terms of for me, their streets ahead of anybody else in terms of prestige. Juventus perhaps might be in that conversation, but I'm not going to get into all that. United are in it. And when that's the case, you have to, for me, have people who, not every single person has to have a link to Manchester United, because that probably wouldn't work. but you have to have certain key people who get it. And I always thought we missed the trick with Solskjaer. When Solskjaer came in to do the job for a few months, he should have done it for a few months, and then he should have been made director of football, because I think he'd have made a hell of a director of football. That's the role I could see him having at United, where it would work really, really well. Amenable, charming, good communicator, knows what Man United are all about, had some great ideas in terms of recruitment, in terms of who he wanted, good contacts in the game, but the club didn't follow those instructions. So he's one example, and he'd walk to Manchester from whatever obscure region in Norway he's staying in at the moment. But anyway, the bigger point is, I think Ronaldo's right, and I think as much as Jason Wilcox came across well in that interview, I think we need more people who get it in and around the building. I think that covers everything. I feel like there was more, but maybe there is, and I'll think of it and perhaps do it another time. Tomorrow against Tottenham's a big game, and I won't be watching because I'm coaching my son's football team and we're playing at the same time. So I might see the last 20 minutes. So hopefully we get a result of some kind. But if we get a win, as I mentioned at the top of the video, you start to put a run together where you are in a far stronger foundational position than you ever thought you would be. Certainly I thought we were better than I thought we would be. You lose and it just feels a bit like, oh, here we go again, it was another false dawn. And it's the international break, isn't it? So it's a big game. Okay, nice to be back. Up the Reds, Glazers out.